Oh, yeah, it's time for part de frire. Part de frire. In part number 1, we talked largely about the goals of the early game. In part number 2, we saw the way that our Zerg buddy Zenio achieved his overall plan of securing that right side of the map, getting ready to do some aggression after he had secured that. In particular, we saw how the use of getting 4 geysers very early on in the game allowed Zenio to get this big swell of infestors. That way, even though Zenio was a little bit behind in the food count, sometimes even a lot behind in the food count, he did some very smart infested Terran heavy play, some fungals, stayed alive just fine, was getting ready to attack, and then this happened, right? This whole base devouring thing. So what we're going to end up seeing is how he ends up sort of playing his way out of this situation. One of my favorite things that Zenio does is actually just rebuild these Evo chambers and insta start trying to get better upgrades again, because you just never want to fall behind the upgrades. That's just sort of like a basic thing. But in particular, check your gas geysers, check your queen count, get those infestors up. A few more spine crawlers go down. I actually feel like these spine crawlers ordinarily would not be constructed, but it's one of those, I had so much money and this base was feeling so unsafe, why not do it at that point in time? And I think Next Naya did something that's actually freaking brilliant. This is so smart. The only criticism I could possibly have is that his +1 attack is a little bit delayed. As you are doing this big drop around stuff, start transitioning into Ultraling. Because your opponent is going to be having to do some of these like low emergency defense type stuffs, and it can be quite annoying. You can also trap Ultralisks inside of infested Terran eggs quite effectively. But again, notice how much pressure Zenio's under. Ooh, burrowed infestors, line it up. Do that. Do that a lot in this matchup. Because remember, what's the whole theme that we've been saying? You want to defend, and anytime you're doing this, you want to do that. You want to Hadouken your way forward. Again and again and again. In part 1, built some Banelings for defense, then move out with 3 Banelings and 3 Zerglings to attack. We built 20 to 30 Zerglings in the mid-game to defend. Counterattack to pull back. And again, we build all these freaking infestors, which are so great for defense. Start shoving right on back. Very important theme that specifically stands out in Zerg vs. Zerg. Far more stronger than in the other matchups. And suddenly, Queen running away. Infested Terrans doing their thing. This is almost always just strictly correct to do. I would almost always break one of those infestors off, just for the usual purpose of if he appears. But now let's talk about a more broader strategic idea, which is that anytime you can get your opponent, like let's actually back up to right here, all we know thus far is that this could be a positive outcome for us. Let's think of it in a vacuum. Is 20 infested Terran eggs at an undefended expansion good? Say yes. It's good. Perfect. You're on the same page as I am. Now, I want you to do one more step. I want you to do the more broad, or the broader, thought process of, well, how does this influence his army positioning? Because army positioning is really everything past the 20-minute mark. The instant we cause his army to be out of position, we can begin doing these little pokes and pushes. This is specifically noteworthy in Terran versus Zerg. Terran players drop with medevacs, and then what happens? Well, all the Mutalisks come back to defend, and then we can get the opportunity to advance forward with our troops. Same thing. I mean, sure, we may end up retreating, but we can also catch little bits of their army out of position, such as these 3 Ultralisks were not even anywhere near the fight. And if we can just take a couple of our low food count, how much food is an infestor? Oh, well, it is 2. There you go. There's our little reference panel. This is 8 food total, and yet we were able to distract 3 Ultralisks worth of food. plus some Zerglings. So we're actually getting close to like 30 food being distracted. So now we're able to isolate. We're able to take Roach and Fester and not just have it be this army that engages stuff, but it's this army that can split up in creative ways to force his army to split up in worse ways. And then we engage it there. This overall engagement was, I would probably say, a little bit on the positive side for us. Not like resoundingly positive. But we pretty much lost just some Roaches, and he's already lost 4 Ultralisks. And again, notice that his push all the way back got his army out of position. Out of position. Yep, make it for defense, go against the offense. This is just great, great use of Roach and Fester. Good stuff. Good stuff. He's going to catch his army a little bit out of position. Notice how these things, again, are sort of going to be splitting up. These guys almost certainly should go up here. These ones, I think it's pretty clear what they're up to. And these Roaches should begin poking at this general region right here. Roach Infester is actually quite versatile in these sorts of spots. It's quite quick and ninja. And look at that, checking this expansion. Look at that great expansion management. Thus far, we have only really talked a lot about tactics in the late game. And it's been really, really great seeing all these tactics that our Zerg buddy Zenio's been doing. And now, oh no, look at all these Zerg units. Oh wow, that's a lot of Zerg units. Better just go swing up into his main. And look at the food gap closing. Look at the units lost tabs starting to really clearly favor red. Oh gosh, look, we caught these small amounts out of position. Now these Ultralisks could hang out here and begin trying to work through all these Infestors that are spread out through the base. Might even be a little bit too too many Infestors. Doesn't change the fact that this is kick ass. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent stuff. And look at Zenio, who was behind probably 5 minutes ago. Just erupt into this enormous lead. Oh, God. Oh, he killed me over here. That just stinks. Oh, yeah. Catching his army out of position. It's very easy to think of StarCraft 2 as a general rule of my blob versus your blob. You know, is Roach and Fester better against Ultralisk Zergling, or vice versa? Who wins there? Well, the answer is that it's how you play against it. For instance, if I were up against another Roach infestering player, I might be a little more inclined to do something like Roach dropped. Pull my Roaches off the main force. And leave my Infestors with it, because I know I can flip the tide of any battle with my Infestors in that way. And of course with easy cleanup. Always in the mood for some defense. GG. Yeah, alright. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now because Marky is an amazing human being, Markio has a question grabber that if you begin something with Dear Day 9, it will pop up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the refresh, I'm going to hit the start. Marky's even added more features because, again, Marky is an amazing human being. And while he's doing that, before we end up taking some questions about this particular Zerg vs. Zerg, I wanted to, of course, note that State of the Game will be on in 30 short minutes. And we're trying to break 40,000 viewers. Woo! Go us! Support JP McDaniel. Yeah! The double uncoordinated fist pump of excitement. Tune into that at mlg.tv. Also, I would like to note that Fun Day Monday for next Monday is the simplest topic ever. Give me the closest game of all time that you've played. Monday at day9.tv. Include like a one-sentence description of why it's so damn close. Not a huge one, not nothing, but one sentence because we already have close to 1,000 submissions. And it's been one day. So we're probably going to end up getting more. And I don't want to overwork the Fun Day Monday admins. So again, to Monday at day9.tv. Let's take some questions. Oh, here's a great question from SC2 Taishu. You talk about crossing things off the list, but could you explain a little bit more about how to respond? So, for example, if you see mutas, the response is blink and storm. But there isn't as straightforward a response to what to do if you can cross off mutalisks. So let's talk a little bit about that concept. there's a mistake that many players do, which is to see what somebody's doing and to try to conclude what he will be doing next. What you should actually be doing is concluding what he cannot be doing next. So for instance, if you scout a Terran player and you see him with no gas, he has 1 barracks and no gas, you can't conclude he is early expanding, or you can't really conclude that he is going for, you know, maybe there's barracks hidden around the map or something like that. You might say something like he could be doing this or this or this or this. The easiest way to think about it, though, is what he can't be doing. He cannot be going Banshee. He cannot be going for a big tank push because he has no gas. And you might say, well, isn't that the same thing? It's very easy to make this mistake, for instance, if you scout a Terran player who has 1 geyser up, and you say, oh, he must be teching. He must be doing something tech-related, like Fast Reaper, maybe Fast Marauder, maybe he's going to be going for 111, maybe he's going Cloaked Banshee. You can't necessarily conclude that he has to be working in that set, because he could see that you scouted him, kill off the drone, and then just build a command center right then and there. There's nothing stopping him from doing that. So in other words, when you see just 1 gas, you cannot cross off a guy who throws down a command center. And that might sound far-fetched, but it's exactly what Puma does. He lets you in his base, you see the gas, he builds a reactor on his barracks, and then he pulls everything out of gas and just builds a command center. It prevents you from really crossing things off the list. So then Taishu's question is, well, what if you crossed some stuff off? It makes it a little bit harder to know how to respond. And you can do the sort of intuitive things. You can say something like, all right, he's not going for a lot of expansions, and he's staying on 2 base, and he has a fast layer. He could be going Infestors. He could be going for maybe a Nidus Network. He could be going Mutalisks. And you just make sure that whatever you do works against the remaining set of things. Like, oh, he can't be going for a huge mass expand with a ton of roaches. He can't be doing all these other things. You think about what's sort of left in that box. What this is really, really useful for, though, in terms of responding, is you can think about what you get to cut out. So, for instance, you scout your Terran player. He is not getting gas. You can cross off Banshees for him with Cloak. Cool, that means I get to cross off Observers and a robotics facility. Now what? I could do something like Blink with Hallucination and blink up into his main and really mess with him, and I never needed to get the Robo in the first place. These are the sorts of things that you want to think about. So, in this specific game, in this Zerg vs. Zerg, right at the start, he saw a fast expansion, he saw Banelings from his opponent, and hell, he got to walk into the entire base and see what was up. He knows that roaches are not a possibility. Cool, that means that I, as Zenio, I don't need to get a lot of roaches, I don't need get a lot of spine crawlers. So now what? Cool, I can get a layer faster. Excellent. Cool. So again, you're thinking about, if I don't have to worry about all this stuff, what opportunities do I have before me? And that is the important thing. There's those little tiny bonuses. Or, you know, things like, he is expanding a lot. He cannot possibly attack me soon. I have plenty of time to get the upgrades I need. Cool, I'm getting a bonus. A lot of the other stuff, like Blink Stalker, Storm, these are, like, Blink Stalkers and Storm are good against a lot of stuff. It's hard to be really boned when you get those 2 pairs of units in decent numbers. But if you can think clever things and like, ooh, he's expanding a lot, I can get another upgrade. Ooh, he's expanding a lot, I can get an expansion up and still get my Blink Templar up. Now you're starting to think in that appropriate avenue. Let's see here. Yeah. Red Mantis asks, what is my thought about Mutalisks in Zerg vs. Zerg? I love Mutalisks. I'm actually going to come back to the 12-minute mark in this game. Boom. As we look here, we see this Overlord. Actually, let me go to the Everyman cam. We see Overlords from both players in the middle. We see, you know, Overlords like this from next Naya. Actually, look at Naya's viewpoint. He has a good bit of vision through all those key attack paths. And this is allowing him to, you know where to position his roaches, know that he is safe for doing these types of things. With Mutalisks, it's an effective way to put your opponent in the dark. The biggest things Mutalisks grant is map control. I get to see stuff. You don't. Ugh. What the hell else do I think about Mutalisks? I think that they're a reasonable just like thing to do, but it's important to think about where you're strong and where you're weak. You're really weak in direct engagements. You cannot really hope to get into that comfortable position where I'd have Ling Muta and just barrel down your Roach Hydra army. And again, to come back to this game, this is kind of a similar thing. Like, this huge Ultra Ling army works pretty well in these direct storm the front engagements. When it messes up, or what the effect of these little tactics is it's pulling the opponent all over the place. This is what Mutalisks will do. You want to do stuff like this with your Mutalisks, where you do an attack up here, not with Infested Terrans, but obviously with the Mutas. He brings his stuff to defend, and then you counterattack with Roaches or Zerglings. And you actually do have enough gas to get some Roaches up when you get the Mutalisks. You can do a lot of expanding because you have that counterattack advantage. You can spine up one spot on the map and then just start going for counterattacks and expands all over the place. It's really, really sort of cool and creative and clever. The thing that you have to be careful about with Mutalisks is they are not good in direct engagements. Infestor Hydra, or just Hydra, it's pretty fucking one-sided, to be honest. It's pretty horrific. So I would say you have to think smartly about your transitions. Probably the most common strong one that I like is Mutaling into a lot of expanding straight into pretty fast Ultralisks with Zerglings. You're upgrading your Lings, you know, then the Ultralisks pop out, and he has this Roach Hydra army, and he has the Infestors to kind of like deal with your Mutas, but then Ultralisks are unaffected by the fungal growth, and that is the thing I think about that. Also, split your Mutalisks up. I actually think that's really important. A lot of people are just like, box, click, 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 box, click, click, click. If you just have two control groups, you will really fuck a motherfucker up. It didn't remain PG all the way to the end. We're going to take one more question. Johnny Hobo says, Dear Day 9, why not start out with Roach for opening instead of Ling Baneling? I have some tornedness about this, especially on Shakura's Plateau, where if we come back to the early game, you don't just go Roach. It's not just Roach instead of Baneling. Early Roaches, like a Roach at 20 food, a Roach Warren at 20 food, is way different than a Roach Warren at 30 food, is way different than a Roach Warren at 40 food. So let's actually pop into the game and see if there's any point where we could have gotten those early Roaches. So right about now, we have our first inject. We could get a Roach Warren right now, but immediately that means we get no second queen. Do we really want to do that? I mean, an issue is that, did we even know what he was doing? Let me actually... Well, we could see this right here. This, to me, is immediately a really bad time to get Roaches. He has gotten an expansion up. So, one of two things really freak me out at this point. If I get Roaches, they take a long time to get to his base because I don't have speed. I don't have that many Roaches because I don't have a good economy. I'm essentially committed to trying to kill him if I get a Roach Warren right now. So, he can actually just get more Roaches than I am. That's the first thing that kills me. The second thing is that he can just overwhelm me with Zerglings. He has 2 hatches, both with double injects, spewing out nothing but Zerglings. And I just have my one measly queen at home. With these distances, counterattacking is like really scary. So let's speed it up a little bit. Let's assume that we do get our second queen up. This is when we are gearing up to do some of our damage. What scares me a little bit about getting a Roach Warren up now that we're around 30 food, notice that a Roach Warren takes about a minute to build. He has about a minute left, or actually shit, less than a minute left on his metabolic boost. So before my Roach Warren is done, I gotta figure out a way to worry about staying alive versus a Ling run a huge amount of Zerglings. And I think that it actually is possible, but it just feels kind of scary given the opening that we've kind of elected to do. I'm starting to feel like more and more like right now is a reasonable time to get the Roach Warren up. Maybe we could have bought ourselves enough time to get the Roaches up. So maybe around the time that I'm starting to build the Baneling Nest, yeah, maybe at 30 food I'm a little more comfortable building it. I do have some concerns about that, but I think it's important to go through the whole thought process of it. Also, if you throw down some roaches, banelings are way, way cheaper on larva. Like, vastly, vastly cheaper on larva. That's why a lot of people enjoy getting banelings as a defense, because it's like, I spend 5 zerglings getting 5 banelings. I'm immune to zerglings, assuming my control is good. And now I'm ready for whatever is thrown at me. Because, again, he can't have roaches. And that will allow me to do things like build drones and get the refineries up and then take it to late game, which is where I'm trying to go anyways. With roaches, as you'll see if you watch a lot of Sen games, when you start building a lot of roaches, you have a pretty narrow range of what you can do in the early game. And you know what? That's the things I think about roaches, and I'm realizing I'm going a little longer, so I'm just going to stop talking. Stop and talking. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow for some ZvP LiquidZenio action, and I'll see you right now on State of the Game. MLG.TV. Go there, he, he.